So let's dig into the first driver of productive persistence, that students believe that they are capable of learning. In the first week of class, we ask our students this question: being a math person or not is something about you that you really can't change. Some people are good at math and other people aren't. And it's surprising, but over 2/3 of our students enter in agreeing with this statement, basically saying that there's this race of math people and that they're not one of them. And so our faculty, and myself included, thought this was a huge area that we should focus on in the Starting Strong package. But before we get into what we do to help promote a growth mindset, I want to just clarify what we mean by fixed mindset and growth mindset, probably terms you have heard before. What we mean by a fixed mindset is a mindset that you are currently in which you believe that your intelligence is fixed. So if you have to try hard, you're clearly not smart, and that there's no point in trying if you're not a natural. This goes back to stereotypes we have about what it means to be smart, about how it's effortless, natural, easy. Someone may have said to you, or you may have somebody said before, look, oh, you got that so quickly, you're so smart. And so it's often synonymous, speed as well as intelligence. And for students who believe that their intelligence is fixed but they do well, they might call themselves dumb. They might attribute their success to other factors besides trying, besides a good strategy or asking for help. They might think that they just got lucky, or they have an easy teacher, or it's an easy exam. I know in one of my statistics classes, one of my students got a B on the exam, and she said, oh, I just got lucky. And I told her that was statistically unlikely, that was the case. But it didn't really change her mind. And oftentimes it might not change their mind, that they might persist in this belief that they really are not math people and they cannot learn math even if they do well. On the other hand, some students and some of us are in a growth mindset when it comes to mathematics. So we believe that our intelligence is malleable and that trying harder is one of the keys that makes you smarter. And actually learning obstacles can be overcome through the process of learning, which involves sustained effort, help seeking from others, and use of improved strategy. So it's not, again, just effort. You might hear that critique lauded at it, just keep trying harder, but actually it's about strategy use and help seeking when needed too. Those are also very important parts of the process of learning. And so how do we shift our students from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset? Well, one thing we do is we actually help them understand what it means to be smart. So understand the process of learning, that it isn't just quick, effortless, natural, easy. It actually involves sustained effort, help seeking from others, and use of improved strategies, something that Calvin is learning here. And so we talk a lot about the brain, although maybe not this brain, this is my brain. If you see the resemblance here, it's a younger photo, so I understand if you don't see it right away. But anyway, what we do is we teach them about how neurons work, how they connect based on the experiences that you have, and how you can strengthen connections in your brain through the use of deliberate practice. And what we did is we contextualized this article originally meant for middle schoolers for our community college students. And it has excerpts like this. Most people don't know that when they practice and learn new things, parts of their brain change and get larger, a lot like muscles do. This is true even for adults. So it's not true that some people are stuck being not smart or not math people. You can improve your abilities a lot as long as you practice and use good strategies. And now within this article, and you'll see it in the next session, is a whole bunch of relevant examples from neuroscience about how people's brains change when they learn how to juggle, or London taxi cab drivers have bigger hippocampi because they have to navigate the streets of London just from memory. And so the students read through this very short article, and then they do four things. First, they write a summary, just what was the article about, very, very brief, putting it back in their own words. Second, we have them talk about a time where they or someone they know learned something, and that often includes learning how to drive or learning a new sport. The next thing we have them do is write a letter to a future student. I actually have one here from one of our New York colleges. So there's something different in our learning process. You and me both should work together in order to succeed. Give it our all and do it because it's our last semester, which means we're at the finish line and it's no time to give up now. If we have to put in extra hours of studying, let's do it. If we do not understand the material, let's ask for help or even go to tutoring. Let's finish this last math course with a bang because there are more things to learn up ahead. So you see in these letters that we're writing to future students that they are now conveying this message of growth. And they are believing that through this process of learning they can learn math. And so we come to the last important part. After the students engage with this activity, we want them to immediately do a rich problem in math. And that's so they can get evidence that they can learn in mathematics. And your faculty mentor will have wonderful examples of rich problems that they can follow on to this activity. Now, before we put this activity into the Pathways materials, we actually evaluated whether it was effective or not for our students. And we compared it against a control article. Now, this control article talked about the brain, that there are 4 lobes of the brain, what a neuron does, but it didn't have that message of growth. It didn't talk about the process of learning in the same way that the growth mindset article did. And we randomly assigned students to one of these 2 conditions. They're all in the same math class. This is the only thing that was different. And we saw that students randomly assigned to that control condition, 20% of them withdrew from developmental math versus only 9% in the growth mindset condition. So this was a 51% decrease in withdrawal rates. It took about 40 minutes, cost $0. And so now it's integrated and embedded in our Pathways materials. And that's great that we're reducing outcomes like withdrawal from the course, but we also hear it when students are leaving the course. This is a message that carries throughout. This one student says, I feel very confident because I dedicate my time to learn the concepts thoroughly. I feel that if one person put in the work to really understand the concepts, they can pass. I was never a math person, but coming into Statways completely made a 360-degree turn about how I feel about math. It is great. Now, as you know, we don't teach geometry in Statway or Quantway, although one of our faculty members, and I think it's Jim who is there today, said 360 degrees, that's a revolution, and so I'll go with that. But anyway, if we look back at what this student is saying, they're saying how confident they are. They feel like they can learn, and it's really exciting that they put learning before grade, before passing. I feel like I can learn it, and then I can pass. And they understand that they can control that process. This is very different than the quote we shared earlier about that student who is just so frustrated about that diagnostic assessment. And so this student is really showing that growth mindset, that they believe they can tackle any learning challenge. And so what we see often is this. This is a graph here. On the y-axis is the percent of students in a classroom with a growth mindset. So at the start of term, we see that many of these classrooms start in different places, but mostly by the follow-up, which is 1 month into the course, we see that most of the classrooms have more students with a growth mindset about mathematics. And that's in large part due to this article and the curriculum we have. However, what we've started to notice over the many years that we've done the Pathways is that this mindset doesn't always maintain throughout the entire term. In fact, we often see a dip in growth mindset during the second half of the term. And when we've interviewed students and faculty about this, same thing keeps coming up, that as students face new challenges, as their curriculum gets more challenging and complex, and they have to demonstrate their expertise on a variety of topics, students can start regressing back to that fixed mindset. And that's why we see this kind of loss in growth mindset throughout the term. And so this was a big priority for us for the last 3 years, is focusing not only on starting strong, but also staying strong. How do we help students keep that growth mindset? And we do a lot on developing a classroom culture that supports a growth mindset. So how do you do that? Well, there's one shallow way to do that is create growth mindset memes and just send them to your students. And I'm just kidding, please don't do this. It's just a lot of fun, so go ahead and do this with each other, but don't send these to your students as the only thing to promote a growth mindset. I did want to share, these are from our Staying Strong faculty, whom we're very proud of, and thank you for the memes. But what should we really do to help create an environment that supports a growth mindset? Now, the first is the writing intervention, because that provides an initial jolt and introduces students to the concept of the process of learning, something that's really under their control. And next is you really want learning opportunities that maintain a growth mindset. And that is most of the learning opportunities, if not all, in the pathways. They involve productive struggle. They're about rich problems. They require a variety of different strategies. Students can get help from their peers on the online platform. They can learn from their mistakes and try again. And so our curriculum really supports the development of that growth mindset. But there are also other things we can do, and I'll focus on these other two next. The first is talk in a way that promotes growth mindset. So what are some conversation starters, some phrases that we can use in everyday conversations with our students? And the next are, what if there's a really challenging scenario in our classroom where we think our students might need a boost and reintroduction to growth mindset beliefs? And we've seen all four of these things, the writing intervention, these learning opportunities, everyday language, and these boosters to be really effective in developmental mathematics classrooms at creating an environment that supports a growth mindset. So let's dig into everyday phrases. So what do we mean by that? The goal here is to use language that really emphasizes the process of learning and particularly tells students that this is the thing that they have control over. Now, it's irrelevant, should be irrelevant where they came from, what they were born with, how they did in their previous math class. What is most important for you and that student right now as you're talking is what they can do now, what they can do with their process of learning, which is sustained effort, good strategies, and help seeking. And we took the idea about developing these conversation starters, these phrases, from the study that PART2 did with Khan Academy. And all they did is they inserted phrases in a fractions module. So you might see it right here. The most effective way to do something is just to do it is actually a placebo phrase, like if at first you don't succeed, try again. And they compared these placebo phrases to growth mindset phrases. So a growth mindset phrase, for example, would be when you learn a new kind of math problem, you grow your math brain. So again, emphasizing new and new challenges that they can take and how that actually helps them as learners. Now students, the 250,000 students who went through this fractions module were randomly assigned to one of these conditions, and they didn't know which one it was. But those randomly assigned to the growth mindset condition had a 4 to 5% increase in their learning rates. And those just from one small phrase embedded in this material. So these small phrases are powerful carriers of this message that you can grow your brain and learn new things. So what are some examples? Well, the first example deals with praise after success. And this is actually a really important time to emphasize a growth mindset, that you want to praise them for the process of learning and look forward to the future. So you could say you're improving using some good strategies, and it's great if you can name those strategies that they used. Your efforts are really paying off. Instead of something like, I'm glad this was so easy for you. And what that red phrase does is it sets up the goal as it being easy. That's what we want the goal to be. And it emphasizes the outcome, that this was so easy for you. It doesn't acknowledge the work that they did to get where they are and where they could go next. And so that's what we want to do when we're praising after success. Another really important time to use these everyday conversation starters is when your students are facing difficulty. And so oftentimes this is a time where we might regress back towards our fixed mindsets and towards our beliefs that we can't learn, is when we face a setback. But what you could say is that struggling is part of learning. It doesn't mean you can't get it. Your brain is making connections that are not yet strong. Instead of something like, well, you would have done better had you tried harder, or not everyone could get an A on that test, so don't worry about it. The first, you don't know, you wouldn't have done better had you tried harder. You don't actually know what they tried, or maybe that's not the case. Maybe they need a new strategy or help. The other one, not everyone can get an A. Don't worry about it. It's meant to comfort, but it actually sets really low expectations for your students. So the goal here is to set high expectations for their students and talk about struggle as part of learning, and that you can work together with this student, or the student can work with their groups or with the online materials and the resources to learn this. And it might take some time, but they can learn this material, and that you believe in them. So those are some examples of everyday language that we use to promote a growth mindset. And there are more materials about this in the Starting Strong package. But I want to turn to another type of thing that we've learned to promote a growth mindset, and that is a growth mindset booster. Now, these are reiterations, very short, one-pagers, to reintroduce students to the concept of a growth mindset. Apologies. And what we see is that these growth mindset boosters are really effective when students are facing a challenge. And this is from one of our faculty's classrooms, where she noticed in 2011, 2012, this was when she was teaching the pathways, that missing homework jumps up to around 8%. And for her, that's a lot. 8% missing homework assignments in any given module. And so in 2013, she worked with David Yeager to create these growth mindset boosters. And she gave them to her students during a really tough time when they're introduced to inferential statistics. And as a result of this booster, that's the only thing she changed, she saw that her missing homework dropped to 3.5% throughout the rest of the term. And so that students were able to develop this growth mindset again, shore it up, promote it, and then engage in those everyday behaviors that are important for their success. And not only did she see this in her grade book, she actually heard it from her students too. So this is from one of her students. When this class started, I was nervous but also excited. I felt like finally I was going to get through the math that had been keeping me behind for so long. And early in the term, I got confident because I was able to do some of the basic material. And my teacher had us read something that told us we could improve the math parts of our brains if we took the right steps. Pretty soon, though, I started to get lost. We started a new unit module, and I thought to myself, I could do the last one, but this one looks impossible. I was lost, and I was back to my old way of thinking. But as I kept going, I remembered what we learned, that people's brains learn the most when they're challenged. Learning's all about the transition from not knowing something, so being confused, through that confusion into knowing something new. And I just love this because a student just remembered what they had talked about in class, what they had read in class. And when they were challenged, thought about this journey that they needed to take from confusion into knowing something new. And then I just want to give a shout out to one of our Staying Strong members, Miss Mary Crawford Mohat. This is from one of her students this year. And Mary's done a really excellent job at creating a culture that promotes a growth mindset. As you can see from the letter, it's addressed to Miss Mary that my brain is growing, LOL. The student says, I want to say thank you for your patience with me and always being available to help. Your ability and gift to teach has allowed my confidence and ability to increase 100%. This has been the difficult subject my entire life, and now, because of you, I actually enjoy learning it. And I think of it outside of campus. I look forward to your class because I know if I don't have it yet, I will. And I love that growth mindset. If I don't have it yet, I will. And it's a lot on the student for developing that growth mindset, but also a lot to thank for Mary Crawford Mohat for creating that environment in which students can develop that growth mindset. So again, make sure to ask her for all her tips and tricks in the next session and tomorrow when she talks more about staying strong. And so anyway, just to wrap up, these are a lot of different things that you could do in addition to the growth mindset writing activity that helps promote students' growth mindset in your classroom.